Welcome back to the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and we are joined again today by Grayson Hill. It's 2 years in a row now doing the NBA Finals shows. I think it might be 3. I don't even know at this point. They were definitely all of last year. I know jumped on a ton. Actually, funny enough, I'm pretty sure the memory came up on my Facebook, with the page that I'm pretty sure you filled in for Josh with a missing voice 2 years ago. So technically, this is year 3. But before we jump into that with Grayson, people see the title. He's obviously our NBA Finals guest, as always. Don't forget to use code 2Pointers for $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com, link in the top of the description. My target audience at this point, unless you live in Dallas, because you're probably not going to be able to use these tickets in Boston again. We'll jump into that in a second. Sorry, Boston fans, you're probably not going to get $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek anymore. For this season, at least. You might be able to for November. But if you're going to Fenway Park, you can get $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com, link in the top of the description gets that. It also helps support the show, be able to bring out some content that we can help you, that you guys help us bring out. So we greatly appreciate the support from both all the listeners and the viewers, as well as SeatGeek. Thank you guys so much for the support there. That was my fun way of saying that we probably both agree, and we haven't talked about this, but shocker, we've been doing pods together for a while, that we probably are pretty aligned on what the next we're going to say 25 minutes, give or take, is going to sound like. And then we'll talk about, unfortunately, the Dan Hurley saga that began and ended in 72 hours. Should be interesting. Before we jump right into that, anybody that might be new here in the next 72 hours or last 72 hours, introduce yourself again. Get used to that, because there are a lot of new listeners around here the last couple of weeks, which we greatly appreciate.
Yeah, old or new, thank you for tuning in and listening to us talk basketball for a little bit. Like you said, my name is Grayson Hill. I've been a frequent guest this time of year in this round of the playoffs. I've always enjoyed it. Always welcome the chance to jump back on again and talk finals with Trevor. And here we are again. People said for years that Kyrie kept the Celtics from winning a championship, and here we are. He's halfway to giving them one in 4 games, because some idiot named Grayson Hill, coincidentally, 3 days ago told you there's no way he's that bad again. Yeah. Fact check, false. He's still bad, and it's not helping. Luka Hero Ball worked for, I'll be generous, a quarter and a half. And here we are again, another Celtics home win. Dallas couldn't even force the third infuriating Boston home game 2 loss in 4 rounds. So they're 2 rounds clean of that now. So I think they've exercised those demons.
I'm not so sure on that yet. I have more questions.
They've been out of their home game. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's fair. It doesn't have to come at home. They've done that game many times at many places.
True, yeah.
And I have more questions coming out of game 2. As crazy as it sounds, I know Boston was 105 to 98, but I have so many questions and yet so little about the game itself, and this was the closer of the 2. But finish your point, and then I'll figure out where we need to even begin.
I mean, my main takeaway from game 1 is what could go wrong for Dallas did go wrong. Went back to the drawing board. They came out and did the same thing again, and somehow the game was closer. 3-point shooting, worse, still atrocious. Free throw shooting, worse, still atrocious. Kyrie Irving, as we know him in this stage of playoff rounds, still atrocious. They were batting 1,000 for things that cost them game 1, trickling into game 2. We didn't see quite the massive momentum swings as we did in game 1. It's much more sustained. I don't think either team had a lead north of 15 points, I want to say, throughout the evening. So a more palatable game for the objective viewers like me and you. I'm sure fans of both teams, they're going to watch no matter what the score is. That doesn't really matter for them. Lively, again, a rookie. I want to lead with that with him, because we forget he was minus 15 again in a handful of minutes. It's just we're going to learn a lot about Jason Kidd based on what they look like 2 days from right now, Wednesday night, in game 3, which is essentially Dallas' season. If they go down 3-0, it's win, not if. So I think we're going to learn a lot about, if nothing else, Jason Kidd when they take the floor next in Dallas on Wednesday.
All right, so that leads me to the first question that I was really glad that helped segue into. Did we learn anything about these two teams in 2 games? Because I think I'm more confused now than I was prior to game 1. Like, I picked Mavs at 7. So did you. So did
Oh, I know. I did too. Yeah.
80% of the population. And yet I sit here after 2 games going, A, I should have just not thought with my rear end. And B,
Yeah.
I don't like. I think I'm just more confused. So is there something like I'm missing? Maybe it's a point. Maybe we talk in a circle and figure it out. But is there something you've learned about either of these teams where I'm like, okay, that's what I was missing? I don't know. I'm so lost.
I mean, this is with bad Tatum. I mean, imagine if Jayson Tatum was playing to his potential.
That's on the agenda as well. So we can do this now. I mean,
these games would come off of cable television if he was putting up 30 a night. I mean, it would be embarrassing. They would put on Caitlin Clark in the middle of the third quarter every time they played this game. So I mean, and we can get to. Well, I'm sure we'll get to Tatum and how he's like the worst shooting player of his caliber in the finals in the history of the finals.
I don't have a stat quite that bad, but I just.
And I mean, I've got a couple written down, and it's alarming. But you bring in Jrue Holiday for games like this. He did it in game 1 against the Pacers, and he did it last night, or not last night. Yeah, last night, Sunday night. Yeah. Yep. This Celtics team is good enough to win against anybody in any round with Tatum playing like he's being threatened by like the cartel. Like, do not score 25 points or else. But also, please take 25 shots and try. It's just, I don't understand it. The Warriors series, I get it. That's just 2 different eras roster-wise at that point. You've got guys going for ring number 4 or 5. All those Warriors players earn that, and then there's Draymond. And so I get that. That's excused in the grand scheme of things. But now Dallas is a team fresh on this scene, on this stage, not supposed to be there, et cetera, et cetera. And Tatum is still shrinking offensively in this spotlight. And again, we said it a couple of days ago, he does more than score for his sake, thank God, or otherwise they'd have riots in Boston. But I mean, at some point, is Jason Kidd's hot take or just being bored in media press conferences about Jaylen Brown being the best player? I mean, how much runway does that get if we keep seeing this? I mean, and you could shrink it down to he's their best player in the NBA Finals, but if your best guy is not the best guy in the NBA Finals, then how good is he as your best guy? If the last 4 games before the ultimate goal, he disappears offensively. It is mystifying to me. I don't understand it. He was bad from 3 again. Not that he's a sharpshooter generally anyway, most nights. The shooting percentage starts with a 3. It's like he's cursed. I don't get it. But to the credit of Brad Stevens and everybody above the court, they put this roster together. They went out, got Porzingis, who was excellent, serving his purpose for the team. Jrue Holiday, it's kind of like we mentioned the Derek White game is going to happen. I don't think either one of us said a Jrue Holiday 20-something game high or team high point night was going to happen. He's a huge part of that game 1 overtime win against the Pacers. And he was massive last night in getting this to 2-0 Boston. So the Tatum thing may go down as one of the more confusing statistical, I think it's fair to say, anomalies, just given how good he is regularly in the history of, or at least in this era of NBA basketball.
That was the whole point of what I wanted to go into, was just, I mean, it was more geared and directed at, like, I can't really tell based on that monologue, like, have your opinions of him changed? Because, I mean, just for the context for the listeners, this isn't planned. Like, we basically, everything you just said in the last 5 minutes, or in a roundabout way, one of us said in the last 5 minutes, is the 3 questions I had written down, which is great. We're gonna get to them. That's the best part about this, right? We don't discuss any of this, which is kind of funny how that works out. But I mean, Tatum's discourse has soured in the last 20 hours. But
yeah,
you mentioned the field goal starting with a 3. Unless I did the math wrong, it starts with a 2, which is even crazier. But 18, 9, and 12. And that's 12 assists. Right? So, like, they were putting him in positions where, even in a close game, this is me defending him for a second, he was having to be the playmaker, which a lot of us did say
Right.
before game one that was probably going to happen. They were going to force guys and then leave certain guys open. And in game two, it just happened to be Jrue Holiday. How much I
Right.
want to discredit Tatum in that realm, I'm not sure as heck not defending 6 of 22, 1 of 7, and 5 of 6 from the free throw line. Because even 5 of 6,
No.
people are like, well, what's the story there? It's like, well, he's not attacking, right? But he was.
Yeah.
He did everything in game two that I said he didn't do in game one. So I guess my ultimate question is, has maybe the book's not written yet, but maybe the chapter's not finished, but has your opinion of him changed? Because clearly I see where you were going with that Jaylen Brown part with Jason Kidd.
I mean, a little bit. I'll say game one to game two, he did go from 5 assists, 6 turnovers to 12 assists, 3 turnovers. So from the playmaking aspect, he was much better. I think maybe getting a little bit more comfortable in his perceived role as far as this series is going to play out. As far as if they send two, find somebody because somebody's there, whether it's Jrue, whether it's Porzingis, whether it's Holiday. I said that twice. Whether it's Sam Hauser in the corner, he was what people think Sam Hauser to be last night, but that's fine. They won anyway. Somebody's open. You got to find him. Al Horford hits corner threes every night. It seems that gets the crowd fired up. I don't think he was an integral part of the win last night, but he's not there to do that. So, I mean, I'll give him credit for finding other ways to impact the game. We saw it defensively some in game one. The 12 assists, like I said, I don't care who you are, how bad you're shooting. If you're racking up assists like that, you're cognizant of how bad you're having a shooting night. I mean, he had a team high 22 shots, but if he had 4 assists, then I think the opinion change question changes my answer because I'm like, well, he's not impacting finding from teammates. He's getting bottled up. I think I saw ISO 3-pointers in the playoffs. He's a crisp 8 of 44, which starts with a 1. So, and that's not his, bread and butter anyway. But
Teams are allowing him to do it, and
up.
they've been in positions to be able to let him shoot it. It seems so odd because they seem such that stat alone is so alarming. They seem in such control of most of these games, minus the Indiana one, minus the Miami one. They seem in control of most of these games, and yet he's open for 44 times in isolation for 3. I say open, duh. It's not every time open, but like that stat that like all of your points make sense, but that stat doesn't back anything up because it's so confusing. It's like I'm not this basketball mind that people should be turning to. That's not like it doesn't make sense to me how Joe Mazzulla, who's a really, really good coach, shocker, it took me 12 minutes to talk about how some of his coaching might not be as exciting as we all thought. I don't know. He's been great this series. I can't believe that they're putting Tatum in this many positions where he's the guy out there. And a lot of that's the defense forcing him to do it, don't get me wrong. But their offense should never allow an opportunity where 44 times he's available in isolation for 3, unless there's a lockdown defensive possession. They played Miami, they played Indiana, and they played
Cleveland.
in Cleveland. None of those teams are stout defensive teams by any stretch of the imagination. So how those 3 teams allowed him to be in isolation that much from 3 boggles my mind that we're even here talking about it.
I mean, he's shooting like he's Andre Roberson in the mid 2010s. That's what's happening. That's why. I mean, they're never going to let him per se. Like guys get left on the corner island, just like I dare you to shoot. We'll just grab it off the rim. I don't think the level of respect will ever stoop to that point. But I mean, at some point, when are you not scared of letting the guy shoot? I mean, if he's this much, I don't know if it's between the ears, between the shoulders, what it is, but it's something is amiss because, like we said, he is an incredible basketball player, and he has been shockingly bad in the finals through a series and a half, which is a very, very, very small sample size. But he's been so much better to get them to the finals. It just makes no sense that when you switch, and they don't do it anymore, but they used to put the Larry O'Brien on the court. He just can't shoot. I don't understand it. It makes no sense. Something else I pulled. Lowest field goal percentage by first team All NBA player in the finals since 1960. I mean, that's stunning. That's awful.
Through 2 games, I assume, right?
Bad.
That's taking into account not a full series. Right.
Yeah, even smaller sample size. But I mean, those are the home games. I
Wow.
mean, those are you're in your
Yeah.
friendly confines of TD Garden, which in Boston, if you play for Boston and play bad, it's not friendly confines. So, um,
It's not.
but it is shocking. If they don't make the Porzingis trade, where is this team right now? I don't think it's 2-0.
It might be the Jrue Holiday trade, but in the regular
Yeah,
season,
that
when
too.
Kristaps was healthy in the early parts of the year, that
Mhm.
was when we really got a sense of who this team was, and that was
Right.
December. Like it didn't.
It's a long time ago.
I'm still like it. This is gonna sound stupid, but I can't sit here and tell you like I still have this. There's this thought in the back of my mind that they're gonna blow this. They're gonna blow the next 2 games, and we're gonna sit here and be like, "We got what we wanted. We got more games out of 4," and I'm gonna be like, "I'm not surprised. I'm just not." But yet, they're one of the most dominant teams in the last 20 years. It makes no
I
sense.
mean, this is veering off of statistics that matter, but the corgi that tips the basketball down the stairs into the laundry baskets had 2-0 Boston. Dallas wins the next 3. Boston forces a game 7, and of course, Boston loses the home game 7. So I don't know
I
what
forgot about
powers are
that.
motivating the corgi, but 2 for 2 is not bad.
He's been
I
right a lot more than he's been wrong, but that's also good video editing on the owner's
that's
part.
terrifying when it starts to creep in your mind. What if the corgi is the all knowing
Yeah.
basketball mind we should all be looking to try and make sense of these games?
One defense in Tatum's ISO case, by the way, really quick, is I did see this
Mhm.
yesterday, and I'm really glad that you brought it up, and I'm glad that I finally remembered about this. They do have a lot of sets where like they don't even send a guy back on defense. Like Missoula's doing a really good job of putting themselves in offensive class positions that a lot of teams nowadays aren't really even trying for. So they'll have 5 guys crash on a lot of possessions where if Dallas has 2 or 3 guys that are in the corner or moving towards the corners, Boston's like they'll just leave the guy in the corner and go crash the offensive glass. And to be fair, if you get that rebound, you kick it out to Tatum, he's probably open in isolation from 3. Is he making
Yeah.
it? That brings us back to
No.
2 minutes ago. But my point is that at least I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt for that shooting percentage being below
That scenario makes sense
2.
though. I
But it
mean,
happens a lot. They're doing that a lot this series.
right.
They're doing a lot, period. But I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that because I'm sure Celtics fans or your basketball Ivy League people are going to just be in the comments and they're not going to be happy I didn't bring it up. So it at least needed to be said. So I interpreted your point.
Another statistic. This is more basketball related than the corgi, but Boston won the fast break point battle 15-7. I saw Luca 2 or 3 times where there are 9 people running and he is complaining to officials that are never going to change that call. I don't know who you think you are. They're not going to stop play in the NBA Finals and see if Luca had one over on us. Like if they miss a call, they miss a call. Happens every night, 4 or 5 times a quarter, probably. And you just have to know better. I don't understand it. You have just got. I mean, he is not some all NBA defensive first, second, third, fourth, 15 dude, but I, you got to be across half court. Like, do something. Put your body between the ball and the basket. Like, that's not asking for some Herculean effort. And I get that. You know, he makes a living at the free throw line getting calls like that, and his knee is healed when he's jumping up and down, screaming at the officials between whistles. But I mean, at some point, those crucial buckets they give up in transition because it's 4-on-5 are going to hurt him. In a game that was a touch above 2 possessions, a 7-point final that got closer than that in the waning seconds, they just couldn't get a quality shot before Boston took a shot clock violation and the game ended. That's going to add up, and that's things you look at on tape in 2 weeks, and you're like, damn, like, what if? Starting with stuff like that, like the controllable stuff. You can't control the officials, but if you don't give a crap on defense because all my feelings are hurt, you're going to get swept in the finals. Is what's going to happen. Dallas is not good enough to just take possessions off, whether it's one guy, 5 guys, doesn't matter. This Boston team, as you said, statistically, is so good. You highlighted it before they even started. Like, it's going to take an insane effort from Luca to defeat a team with less than 20 losses. And through 2 games, without even getting to Kyrie, I don't see a way Luca produces an effort that would make this possible to win in 6, 7. I mean, that's their only 2 options at this point. But I just don't see it yet. And maybe it's the venue. They go to Dallas, even it up, and we're all sounding stupid in a week. But to
I'm not
this
sure a
point,
Wilt Chamberlain like effort does it anymore. Like, because you mentioned
no.
Derek Lively to a point of rookie, Kyrie. We know what
Mhm.
he's been for 2 games. Like,
Yeah.
they're Jaden Hardy. Like, you're at the end of the day, we are running into this talent deficit that we all just kind of
Well, right.
overlooked.
Yeah.
I don't know. To your credit about the fast break points, like, I'm really surprised Boston's not exploiting it more because they're the more
Oh, I know.
athletic
And
team. They're
Dallas
the
was
faster
not
team.
pushing the issue at all on offense.
It
At
doesn't make any
all.
sense. Like, it just seems like something's not like, I'm just surprised Boston has done what they've done and they've not even taken advantage of a place. And there may be something I'm not
Mhm.
seeing where they may not be able to take advantage of the fast break as much. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. Um, Look, if I'm a Dallas fan, I'd be kicking and screaming right now, knowing that Game 2 was the opportunity we've all talked about. Where if that was going to happen, it was going to happen yesterday. But I want to emphasize the third quarter for a second because we talked about the third quarter in Game 1 and how
Mhm.
important the third quarter was for Dallas even making it a competitive game. This game was even
Right.
better than that. The third quarter is where Boston completely, let the previous game get tight, of course, and get close, and you
Mhm.
felt comfortable. But this time, somehow, the Celtics were a third quarter team. This was something I had not seen in a long time. This is per Steve Ashburner. I'm just going to read his quote specifically from NBA.com. The Celtics turned a 63-61 lead midway through the third quarter into 69-63. And then Jason Kidd had seen enough. He retreated to a timeout with 4:56 left in the third. So that really important 5-minute stretch that closes a quarter.
Mhm.
He subbed out 3 guys there. 2 minutes later, 119 seconds to be exact, the score went from 69-63 to 75-63. Boston.
Which is what we saw after the roar back to cut it to 8 in Game 1. And Boston responded, what was it, 13-15-0?
Yep.
And you exit the third quarter with a 20-point game. You're like, okay, well, that was fun for, 119 seconds 2 nights ago. It's, again, credit to Boston. They're Jekyll and Hyde, but those are the kind of things we expect them to be on the wrong side of. And they've responded. And they've closed the third emphatically in both games, and that's the reason why it's not a split or a sky is falling 0-2 hole headed back to Dallas. They've got 2 games in hand, and they literally just have to win the home games. Like that's, I mean, until a home team loses a game, it's not, we're not looking at a quick finals. But based on what we saw in Boston, I mean, it would take something wild, I think, from probably Kyrie, because Luca, to his credit, is trying to beat them on his own, and he had 8 turnovers last night. He had 20 points in the first, call it 14 and change minutes, and he finished with under 30, or excuse me, 32. So I mean, he tried to beat them by himself for a quarter, and I'll push it to a quarter and a half. And they just were up like a bucket, or up like 4, up 5. Like it wasn't like he could just have a one-man avalanche and roll them over. It just wasn't going to happen. They were better than that. Didn't matter what building that was in. I think he started 8 of 10 shooting, finished 12 of 21. I don't know if that's frustration, fatigue. I believe to an extent he's injured, as every player playing his minutes is at this point. Like you're not feeling great. The quote from LeBron after the bubble title rings true for me. It's the only game that you don't ice up afterwards because the season's over. Everybody at this point's hurting. These teams have been in physical series each themselves. They haven't seen too much, you know, extracurriculars yet. Although, if this game gets ugly for Dallas in Game 3, we could probably see some frustration vented there. Who knows? But I just can't believe this team whooped up on my Thunder. That's what I keep thinking about. It's like, how in the world did this team? And obviously, Boston's better than Oklahoma City. I realize that, but I mean, I'm watching Dallas put up 2 sub 100-point games. I'm just thinking, how in the world did we lose this team in 6? I had to sneak a selfish point about OKC in there, but
Well, no,
it's crazy to look
it's
at
an
how
interesting
different
thing
they
to think
look now.
about. It really is because like there are people. I'll give whoever I can think of right now credit. There are people out there that have brought up like how competitive round 2 was. Like
Yeah,
again, a lot of that is Lou Dort. Like let's just be upfront about it. Like
right. And Case
the fact
Wallace,
that
absolutely.
there are 10 defenders better than him right now, but that's not going to be the case for a long time. Like okay, like what
No.
he did to Luca, we established on this show like some of the best counting stats, lowest counting stats he's ever had in his career.
Mm-hmm.
And so to think about how competitive that game was, again, the whole, if you just throw the PJ Washington 3-pointer out of the window for a second, like it's just, we go to a game 7, anything happens, like whatever, right?
Right.
Like we're one controversial-ish play in a game 7 away from this completely being different. Like this could be anybody in the finals compared to, like, I'm not ruling anything out in the Western Conference Finals. But it's a good point, because my whole roundabout way of coming back to it is, I'm still not sure, unless it's Denver, and I think Boston might have did this to anybody. Like, I think I'm landing on that conclusion.
I'm with you. Yeah.
I just never thought when we started this, like, all the doubts and skepticism where that, like, you guys put a really good fight against Dallas, and I'm not really breaking any news here when I say, like, Game 7, I'm not sure. Like, it would take a Kyrie and a Luka performance, whatever, like, because they would obviously have the offensive advantage there. But to round it back into the finals, you mentioned Kyrie and, like, everybody's probably hurt, whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure a historic performance from both of them even wins Game 3. Like, I just am reaching a point where, like, all these role players, I meant to do this yesterday before this show, and I'll make sure I do this before Game 3. I'm going to text Josh, and I'm going to read his exact quote verbatim on air, and I'm going to ask him, what were you thinking when PJ Washington was doing what he was doing for 3 weeks? I just want to know, because that is the reason they're in the finals, and not to sit here and blame a Derek Lively, a Jaden Hardy, like we've already done, but PJ Washington is Derek Jones Jr., right? Another guy where he's going to have his faults eventually. Those guys have to do what they're going to do for all of us to believe Mavs in 7, and they've been nowhere. And they deserve that criticism.
The whole bench sans Hardy in Game 1 has been a non-factor, and that's a net negative when you consider
two of those guys start.
And 1 through 5, Boston's better than probably anybody in the NBA. So I mean, to have the bench have 9 points and Porzingis outscores him by himself, and he's got his leg thing going on, and I'm not going to sit here and play doctor. But again, to my point, everybody's a little hurt at this point. You're playing this long into the early months of the summer. You're going to have bumps and bruises and sprains and strains, etc. So, I mean, when Porzingis is out playing your entire bench, I mean, Dallas got 9 points, 11 boards, an assist, and 3 turnovers from the entire bench last night. 3 for 12 shooting, 1 for 6 from 3. So it's not just the starters from Dallas who cannot literally buy a 3-pointer. They've been at or below 26% from 3 in both games. That's, again, I watched PJ Washington hit like 12 threes in 2 nights 3 weeks ago. And I had more flashbacks of that, because now every 3 I watch hits the rim or it air balls. Derek Jones Jr. sent one into the crowd last night. And he was hitting turnaround fadeaway jumpers against Oklahoma City. So to your point about the supporting cast, Boston's is essentially their key role players are starting. It's just how good the tandem of Tatum on a normal stage and Brown are. And Dallas, to overcome the disadvantage they have roster-wise, has to get Thunder Series type contributions from their guys, and they're all just MIA, every single one of them. I mean, Hardy was good in Game 1, 13 points, whatever. But the Lively piece of it, they're playing him off the floor. I don't know what, other than, giving him a shot of NBA playoff experience, is going to fix that. But, I mean, it is just not looking good for Dallas. Maybe going home will fix it. They're going to have to score 100 points at some point this series. They're going to have 2 more games. There's no way around that. You can do whatever you want defensively, but if you're not scoring 100 points, you're not winning a finals game, especially against, and we'll keep going back to it, one of the better statistical teams in the last 20 years. Whether they lose at funny times in funny ways or not, they still have not lost 20 games, and they started playing at like Halloween. So, at some point, the memes do not bear as much truth as what we see on the court and what we see in the win-loss column. So, Dallas, we have a problem. I mean, it's bad.
The point about the bench, I mean, Pritchard played 12 minutes. Hauser played 10 minutes. Boston shot 25.6% from 3. Like, they weren't stellar. Like we all really thought that Dallas's bench was the better bench. I push back a little bit just because of the quality of veteran you're getting from a Pritchard or Porzingis in this
Who
case.
hit the Hail Mary to end the third, but that was his only contribution.
Right, and if that's my whole point with bringing up the bench is if you're Dallas and you look at this today and you go, all right, they played 6 guys, they shot 25% from 3. It was a 5-point game, and we still didn't win. It all comes back to
Kyrie. One you have to
Kyrie.
steal.
It does. It all comes back to a guy like Kyrie Irving who didn't contribute in the biggest moment of this series for Dallas. And I hate to even do that because I've come around on the whole Kyrie Irving discourse here in the last 12 to 18 months. I really have. But I can only blame Jaden Hardy, Derek Lively, P.J. Washington, Derek Jones Jr. I can only blame them enough. I can only, my whole blame pie thing I always bring up every few months.
Right.
The blame pie is not exactly very friendly for Kyrie Irving right now. It's just not an excuse at this point. It's your back's against the wall. And again, all of this might be outdated in 48 hours. They might come out and just absolutely dominate in game 3. I'm not convinced that's going to happen. I'll ask you the same question, unless you had something else there.
One more thing about Kyrie back against the wall. 2-0 is the hell of a hole. In the 16 finals, in which a team blew not only a 2-0 lead, but a 3-1 lead, game 3 on 31 points on 50-47 shooting splits. So, he's done this before. He was bad in game 2 then. That was 7 years ago. So, I'm not saying we can copy and paste those stats, but he has, at one point in his career, been bad early and then turned into the player we all expect him to be when he is taking basketball seriously like he is now again. And they're going to have it. But to your point, nobody's beating Boston 2-on-5. I don't care who it is. You throw any 2 in there. I don't care if you're pulling guys from different teams or not. You're not beating Boston 2-on-5. And you're definitely not doing it for the next 6 games either. So something has got to change beyond Luka and Kyrie. And it's all the guys we just mentioned who probably take up, 70% of the blame pie. And when we add all those guys up, sans Luka and Kyrie, I mean, those are the guys that win you series. Guys like Jrue Holiday going off. We have not seen that from Dallas at all.
Talking about Kyrie's history point there, I give you one that's more recent that you brought up earlier that I think is a fair point to think about. Boston led the 2022 finals after game 3, 2-1. It took a historic. I'm talking. I think the game 4. I genuinely believe this. I think the game 4 performance from Steph. I think it was game 4. It was either game 4 or game 5. That performance from, I think it was game 4 because I'm pretty sure it was in Boston. That game 4 performance is going to age beautifully. It's one of those ones that we don't talk about enough right now because it just happened and it was Steph's basically final hurrah.
Right.
What he did in game 4 to win them a title 2 games before it actually happened, that can happen with Luka or Kyrie. It can. It just can't.
Absolutely.
I'm just leaving it out there because
100%.
Boston, it's no different. I know it would be 2-2 at that point because Golden State won game 2 in Boston. Boston won game 3 at Golden State.
In Golden State, yeah.
So it kind of flipped back and forth, or vice versa, whatever it was. I think I can't tell with the way that Google's got it laid out here. It looks like the Warriors actually were the home team for whatever reason, but I must have messed that up. Regardless, however it landed back on it, it was 3-1 or 2-1 Boston. It was 2-1 to their advantage, where that Steph game is what it took to get them to the next level to then close them out 104-94 and 103-90. So can it happen? Absolutely. It's just I'm not holding my breath.
Oh no, not at all.
Before we do the other NBA news today, I'll close with this. The same question I asked about Porzingis' chances after game 1, because it is fun to talk about the Finals MVP, even after game 2. It is fun to talk about the odds. Do you have them in front of you? Because I do not. Bad host on me.
I can pull it up because I sent it to you knowing that we would probably
That's right. You did.
I'll
pull it up too.
So I do have them in front of me now, yes.
All right. I'll get them up as well because I know exactly where you sent them. So, all right, I got them up now. The same question I asked about Porzingis' chances in game 1. If Jrue Holiday has one more strong performance in the Celtics sweep, what percentage chance do you give the voters giving it to Holiday? Before you answer, Would you like me to remind you and the listeners who the voting panel is? Because we don't know it
Yeah, I
officially
need
yet.
to know that because if
I'm
it's like Kendrick
paraphrasing.
Perkins, then yeah,
It could be. It could be. I'm paraphrasing here, and I'm going to read you some
it
history
shouldn't be.
to give you an idea of why it technically could be, right?
Mhm.
So last year's Finals MVP voting panel, it's typically 11 media members that are chosen before the series, but then not revealed until after the final game is concluded, and then they have X amount of time to get it in, and then they announce it 30 minutes later, right? Usually a group of, I'm just going to read the quote from SI. The Finals MVP voters are usually a grouping of respected reporters from national and international brands, along with local institutions. By polling 11 media members, there's no chance for a tie. Last year, for example, the voters were Sam Amick of The Athletic, Malika Andrews of ESPN, Doris Burke of ESPN Radio, I guess at the time, technically, Miguel Candeias of Portugal's Abola, Vincent Goodwill of Yahoo Sports, Mark Jackson of ESPN ABC, Sean Powell of NBA.com, Tim Reynolds, shout out Tim Reynolds of the Associated Press, Mike Singer of the Denver Post, Ira Winderman of the Sun Sentinel, and Jeff Zilgit, I think is how you pronounce his name, of USA Today. There were two very important names in there. One of them was a reporter for Denver, and one of them was a reporter for Miami.
That's a choice. Yeah.
That's on purpose. So I'm just giving. So
Okay,
basically, just pretend it's 9 because
Okay.
let's just be real for a second. 2 home voters. I think it's fair. I think it's fun how they do that.
Yeah.
Now that you know, it's basically going to be the guy from the Herald, the guy from who they play in Dallas, the Dallas, whatever that newspaper is, the Dallas Times or whatever, right? The Star. So you have that guy from the Star. You'll have whoever took over for Bob Ryan at the Herald after 500 years. And then you'll have nine ESPN or athletic people. Now that you know that, what is the percentage chance that you would give Jrue Holiday?
Well, the Dallas guy, if they get swept, is going to vote Kyrie Irving. I'll read the odds quickly. Jayson Tatum plus 110, no chance. None. I don't care if he has 60 points tomorrow night. No. Jaylen Brown plus 185. He's been, I think, overall the best Boston player to this point. He fixed the free throw thing. He was 6 of 11 in game 1, 4 for 4 last night. They missed 1 as a team. And Dallas missed 8 because they shoot 72% from the free throw line. Luka is plus 650. Like you mentioned, if we see some kind of eruption in the Dallas games, that's going to trend slimmer. Jrue Holiday at 7-1. I think if he, to your question, if he has one more strong game and we only have 2 more games, I would say 40%. And that's pretty serious because in Tatum's case, you got to earn it, man. You just do. And we're not just going to placate to him because he'd have won the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, which, again, no one's going to remember that was Jaylen Brown. No one cares. But they have the trophy. It's a doorstop in the Brown household, I'm sure. Whatever. The Finals MVP is something that sticks with you for life. Andre Iguodala has one. That was a mistake.
Honestly, maybe the thing that helped his his Hall of Fame resume too. I looked back at it a couple weeks ago because we had talked about it, and I was like, wow, it's kind of interesting how good his career was, and then you add a Finals MVP to it, and it just puts the cherry on top.
Yeah, LeBron only had like 35, 8, and 9. Congrats. I mean, that's cool.
Still crazy.
Whatever. So, yeah, I mean, I would say if I was ranking, if I had to do a top 3 right now, I would do Jaylen Brown, I would do Jrue Holiday, and then I would do Porzingis. I don't think Tatum's in my top 3. If you shrink down their contributions to the last 2 games, I don't know if Tatum's even 4. I mean, I might put Luka ahead of Tatum just because he's contributing more to – this is oversimplifying. The only thing that matters is the scoreboard, and that's not gone Dallas's way. So you're not going to have we're not going to have a situation like that this year where we have some ancillary player get thrown in there. But, yeah, so I would say Brown right now, but Drew's behind him for me. And a gap that will shrink just because we expect what Jaylen Brown is doing from him anyway. And what we're getting from Jrue is so far and above what the bar is for what they need to win. When you factor in whatever the hell's going on with Tatum, his contributions, namely the scoring, especially last night, have been massive. And he's also the reason, I said it earlier, he had even more points. What was it? Game 1. he had like 26 or 28, and it still took
Mm-hmm.
overtime for Boston to win against Indy in Game 1. A series that might be the most uncomfortable playoff sweep of all time, just based on how close 3 of those 4 games were. So I think 40% right now. Through 2 games, we may see 2 more games. We may see 5 more games. Who knows? The longer the series goes on, I think the odds of Jrue getting it drastically decrease, because that would mean somebody from Dallas is doing something crazy, and at some point, Tatum would have to wake up to counter that. In all honesty, so um, yeah. So right now it's Brown for me, but I would put Jrue second, and it's not too difficult of a decision for me right now.
I think 40 is good. That's kind of where I was leaning, and it's.
Mhm.
I only bring it up because it's an interesting thing to think about. Finals MVP is always something that draws people, and they want to hear
Oh,
it.
for
They
sure.
want to look at the odds every day after a game, and like I don't know if you even like. I think you left the last 2 off altogether, but like Porzingis
Right.
and Derek White are 50-1, and Kyrie's 80-1. I don't know if you said them or not, but
I did.
I was like, I'm pretty sure you didn't. I was like, just might as well mention
No.
it. It tells a story, though. It tells a story because ultimately there are 11 people that make that decision. And if you're thinking about the odds, no gambling expert here, but if you're thinking about the odds, you have to eventually start thinking about how they're thinking. And right now, Jaylen Brown's
Right.
your best bet for that.
Oh, for sure.
If
I
you
mean,
believe it's
it's
going to
all
be a sweep,
about
though, that's the holiday thing. That's why we brought it up.
exactly. And I mentioned, I forget what the exact quote from me was about the last one. Like, if you think sweep, bet. I think it was Brown. I said at that point because this was pre-holiday,
He was
obviously after
still
game
really
1.
good.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And a lot of stuff goes into how they move those odds, how much money, things like that, implied probability, all a bunch of stuff nobody cares about. Um, all that being said, do not bet on Jason Tatum with Finals MVP. Just don't do it. Donate that to a nice charity in your area. Do not put money on Jason Tatum with Finals MVP, especially at plus 110. That's garbage. The fact that he was like south of even money to start this series is, I think, hysterical. But how he's the favorite still, honestly, I'm a little shocked. That's why I sent it to you. I was like, why is this name in this
Because all it's
spot?
going to take, I knew you were going to ask that. All it's going to take is
Oh, if he
two.
has 30
He's going to
on
take 2
Wednesday,
good
then yeah,
games. If he has 2 good games and they
maybe.
sweep Dallas, it's over. Like he's getting
Mhm.
it. It just is what it is.
Oh, for sure. No, I
But
agree with that. That's
they
fair.
went from minus odds to plus odds, so you're technically telling me that I'm gonna bet
Oh,
that the
it's
second
moved
best player in the
$2. Yeah.
series. But that's what I'm
hmm
saying. Like the second best player in this series, all things considered, coming into it,
hmm
I can get him at plus halfway through the series. Hey, just had a
And they're
slump.
up
Like
2-0. Yeah. Yeah.
that's where all the people that just don't think about it are gonna do it and be like, "Wow, I
Yeah.
made a
I'll
little
hear
money,"
that. Yeah.
and I'm gonna be like, you know what? That's why they make a lot more money than I do because I overthink it.
Yeah.
Anything else on game 2 before we talk about a potential three-peat in college basketball somehow ties into the Los Angeles Lakers?
A very quick 30-second aside on the state of sports cable television. I don't watch First Take. It's a cesspool now for quality television. They spent 10 minutes on Kendrick Perkins getting unfollowed by LeBron James on Twitter. Um, Mostly because Kendrick Perkins makes a living being a heel towards logic applied to sports. Um, and I'm not going to disrespect how he makes a living. He's very good at it. I think he's a lot smarter than how he talks on TV. I think he plays into that for interactions, which works because he goes viral every other day for something as dumb as uh, unfollow gate or whatever garbage they talked about for a quarter of an hour this morning. I just missed the days of Skip and Stephen A. When they were talking about sports. There's a million things going on right now in the sports world, and they're talking about Twitter follows. I just think that's absurd. But moving on to your head coaching thoughts with Hurley.
I'm only doing this for journalistic integrity. I just hope you know that. So as I update the ticker at the bottom of the thing, I will read it as well for the audience using just their ears and not their eyes. Adrian Wojnarowski, first of all, talking about the state of sports media or whatever you said at the top with sports TV. Shams thought he had this. And then whether you think the Shams Woj thing is interesting or not, it is interesting how Shams had this whole thought and idea up the
It's a
front.
blowout right now, is what it is.
Well, talking about that for Shams, because technically
Yeah, he's
Dan didn't
getting
take it.
slaughtered right now by Woj.
Okay, yeah. So people are going to push back and be like, well, ultimately it could end up being JJ or whatever because Dan wasn't going to take it. Maybe he knew it. I'm like,
Scoot
that's
Henderson, Hornets legend. I don't want to hear that. That was all him.
It just was really odd that Woj was really quiet on Wednesday when the JJ stuff broke. Because I was with Chris O'Brien previewing the finals, and I said, we did this whole blurb about JJ, and I was like, something feels off about this whole situation. Not in my wildest imagination did 48 hours later I think that the two-time national championship head coach was on a freaking private jet to Los Angeles. Zero chance in my mind that was happening. However, as of this afternoon Eastern time, 1:38, breaking, Connecticut's Dan Hurley has turned down the Los Angeles Lakers 6-year, $70 million offer and will return to chase a third straight national championship, which, by the way, for those NBA and NCAA historians out there, would put him in one place and one place only, solely resting on the leaderboards with John Wooden. That was the blurb I added. Sources tell ESPN LA would have made him one of the NBA's 6 highest paid coaches. Woj went on to tweet, as swept away as Hurley became by the Lakers' courtship and vision for him, he ultimately couldn't walk away from a chance to make history and pursue a third straight national championship, or third straight NCAA title and national championship. Even before Lakers talks, Hurley already had a UConn offer to become one of the highest paid NCAA coaches, and those talks will continue per sources. Are you surprised that he decided that Storrs, Connecticut was his home?
Well, when you consider their offer of a lifetime was south of what the Detroit Pistons pay somebody to coach their team to do, no, I'm not surprised. I mean, what are we doing? It's $70 million. That's like KCP money. I mean, this is no. I'd be shocked if he turned down like 90. And I realize he's not going to Lakers for the money. Obviously, he's got plenty of that in Connecticut and plenty more coming, it sounds like. So
that's for
he
sure.
could teach a leverage class for a lot of years after the past 72 hours or so. But
he could retire right now and do that forever. Yeah.
No, I mean, do you want to stay, go for a three-peat, to your point, all that stuff, or be the most under the guillotine coach in all professional sports for $11 million a year, whatever that comes out to? No. And I don't think Redick is going to take that either. So I'm going to start looking at flight trackers to see if Brad Brownell's getting flown out there, because at this point, you're down to Borrego and a prayer. So I don't know what. Whoever crunched the numbers on that contract offer should be fired. I don't care who it is. When I saw the offer, I thought it was fake. Like, I did not think that was the offer. Surely there's something we're missing here. Like, I don't know, a zero. I'm not surprised he turned it down at all. I'm just not. I mean, the sixth highest paid coach in a league of 30 teams. No, that doesn't. If you're going to pry a guy from a foundation that strong in a conference that good, with the pedigree UConn now has, and he didn't establish that, obviously, but he has put a hell of a spot in UConn history with back-to-back
I was going to
titles.
say, he sure as heck didn't make it worse.
No. And, three-peat, very hard to do. He'll be alongside the Chiefs trying to make that happen in American sports. It's very, very rare, especially in top leagues like that. So, I mean, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, the Lakers coaching job largely is miserable because you have two top 10-ish players in the world and a bunch of scrubs, and you're expected to make miracles, and it doesn't happen ever, and you never get the allotted time you should because it's a big market and it's LeBron, and they're not going to fire LeBron James. I don't care if he's 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 years old. It doesn't matter. You're always going to be the first guy out the door. And so they're just kind of entrenched in this. We're going to have two guys, and whoever LeBron can't trade machine out of town, and we're going to go win a title. And it worked once, which is maybe the worst thing could ever happen to them, because then they thought, okay, we can do this again. And it's just, no, you can't. So I think they'll get a quality coach, I hope, for the sake of Lakers fans like yourself. I don't know how Hurley would have gone there. I was very intrigued to see it. But I'm not surprised at all he said no. I mean, you factor in the money, you're going to sweep him off his feet. He might get more than that at UConn, honestly, when you consider all the free drinks and dinners, et cetera, he's about to get in that town that he's earned, honestly, 2 years ago. But I'm not surprised by it. the fact that JJ Redick and Dan Hurley were the first two names floated for this, I could have had 20 guesses and wouldn't have gotten either one of them. I mean, it's crazy, but that's the kind of circus that you get when the Lakers need a head coach, and whoever they land on, I guess, and can pay enough money to put up with what goes on behind closed doors, more power to them. But I am not surprised he said no. Absolutely not.
I'm in no way connected in this situation at all, but I've followed college basketball long enough, and I feel like all these coaches, in some way, shape, or form, are always still the same. And I'm not saying that because I'm bitter. I'm not saying that for any rhyme or reason outside of that. What I mean by that is all of these coaches in college, ultimately, minus the exceptions, your Rick Pitino's. Really, that's in the last 20 years of guys that go to the NBA and try it and didn't succeed. Yeah. I mean, Billy Donovan, I'm counting as a success because he's stayed there, because he's won games and because he's won playoffs. Like that. I'm kind of just keeping him aside.
He's not rebuilding, but yes, no, he's still coaching.
He's still, in the example I'm giving, Rick Pitino and Billy Donovan are the exceptions to the rule. All of these college basketball coaches are the same. They ultimately care about their legacy. Is that exacerbated because Dan Hurley's father is one of the most legendary coaches in American sports, except most people don't know that name until brother. Brother, I think the player resume carries him more than I think people
that's true. Yeah.
Are willing to admit. But the legacy of the dad being a high school coach that is one of the greatest coaches of all time, if you just put him against anybody from a legacy standpoint. All things considered, 6 years, $70 million, we agree, is ludicrous. It's not something that's going to entice him. And my whole overarching point for the 16 people that texted me today about it, whether it's opinion or whatever, or just, hey, like, oh my God, this is interesting. What I will tell you is this, is he can get an NBA job in a year. He's proven it the last 2 years, really 4, but the last 2 years have earned him any NBA job that is willing to pay him. So I think there's no issue.
Willing to pay him, exactly. Yeah.
Willing to pay him. I have no issue with the guy saying, you know what? And by the way, he reloaded. He got Liam McNeely, who's a 5-star kid out of Indiana, to decommit.
They're not going anywhere.
Yeah, to decommit from Indiana and to go to UConn. They're in a better position to repeat than arguably any of these last 3 years. I saw them 2 years ago in Houston. That was the most dominant team I'd ever seen in person.
Yeah.
And last year's team, this year's team, and now currently coming up might be even better. So my whole overarching point is why go now when you can go later? If he cares about his legacy is we'll never question his legacy ever again if he wins the third title. He can go in the NBA and he can win 4 games. The other point that we don't right. The other point I'd like to make that I think is important to think about is the imbalance of the head coaching position now. The scapegoatedness, the firing guys, you mentioned the guillotine of LA, that's happening everywhere now. Darvin Ham just went back to Milwaukee, and he's securely going to be there for 5 to 7 years probably because of the fear of being a head coach either way. I'm not saying I'm speaking for Darvin Ham here, but I'm speaking for the fact that they're not giving him the job next to Doc Rivers. After Doc Rivers goes, they're not going to give it to Darvin Ham again. I don't think he wants it. But my ultimate point is with what you led with, Monty Williams is one of the best paid coaches in the NBA, if not the best, if that hasn't changed. And that imbalance is going to cause everything to throw all of this off. The college guys coming in, assistants coming up. So long-winded point, but at the end of the day, he has no reason to go. Even though this whole thing it just seemed too good to be true. On Friday afternoon, I'm like, everything's lining up for like he's going to get back on that plane and be like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to make the transition because I've already done what I needed to do. But like everything else, 20 years to the year, almost to the month, Mike Krzyzewski was courted by multiple NBA teams, including the Los Angeles Lakers. And what happens? He comes back to Duke, wins a national championship, and ultimately legacy is what matters to these guys. That's just how I'm going to leave it. So 54 minutes, thank you. Asked for 30, gave me 54, as always. Anything to plug on the way out of here before we do this again on Thursday afternoon?
In case you didn't catch at the tail end of the Game 1 episode, I do a podcast with my college roommates called the 1009 Podcast. It's Clemson centered, which is poorly timed because we just got bounced from our own super regional 2-0. I was at both games.
I was wondering what the looking around. Oh no, that's right. I thought they were in game 3. That's right. Phil TV tonight.
As was my co-host Jacob Bailey was faithfully watching at home. Unfortunately, couldn't make it out, but we'll be talking as soon as tomorrow night about how that unfolded. Instant classic game yesterday on Sunday. So many twists and turns. Caglione, Canarella, win forever. Great game, just on the wrong side of it. So we'll talk all things that, what we saw in person, what we saw post game, things like that. So Twitter at the 1009. We'll be posting links to Apple and Spotify through that. So if you wander over there, I appreciate it.
As always, thank you for having Grayson on as many other times in the past, and as well as at least 2 more times here this offseason. We hope for more. Don't forget, 2 Pointers is the code you can use for $20 off your first purchase, SeatGeek.com. Link in the top of the description as well. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow, YouTube, subscribe, all that stuff. We greatly appreciate the support over the last few months. Trivia Showdowns will be returning, obviously Grayson included in all of that as well, and look forward to more content in the future. Thanks, my friend. I'll see you in 72 hours.
See you then.